When you take a class or read a book about logic and the structure of arguments, one of the things that's always examined is the structure of the following argument, where premise one is that all men are mortal. Second premise is that Socrates is a man, and then the conclusion of, therefore, Socrates is mortal. And this is an example of what's called a syllogism, where you have two premises and they're followed by a conclusion that's always going to necessarily be true if the first two premises are true. And premise one is often a broad statement about something that's true for everything that falls into a certain category, such as all men are mortal. Premise two is that a certain object belongs in that category, such as Socrates is a man. And if those first two premises are true, that is, if all men really are mortal, and if Socrates really is a man, it would necessarily be true that Socrates is mortal. Now, if you were to break down my whole 300-page book into this type of syllogism, then premise one would be a religion that shows itself to be clueless about the physical layout of the universe and contains irrational prejudices, and it was pieced together from pre-existing religions. This is a religion that's highly unlikely to have been inspired by an omniscient, omnipotent wisdom, but highly likely to have been assembled solely by the flawed mind of man. And both the skeptic and the proselytizer are in complete agreement with this first premise. The proselytizer will look at the inaccuracy of the ancient Greek myth, that the sun is being pulled across the sky by the sun god, and look at the irrational prejudice of the Hindus' caste system, and note how Sikhism was formed by combining bits and pieces from the pre-existing Hinduism and the pre-existing Islam, and say, yes, these are all signs that such religions did not come from an omniscient wisdom, but were just made up by people. All right, premise two is the skeptic's argument that Judaism and Christianity fit into this category. Because when we read the Judeo-Christian Bible, we can see that its knowledge of the universe reflects only that which was known by ancient people. It contains irrational prejudices, and it shows lots of signs by being influenced by pre-existing religious beliefs. So the conclusion, at least for the skeptic, is that therefore the Judeo-Christian Bible is highly unlikely to have been inspired by an omniscient, omnipotent wisdom, but highly likely to just been something put together by solely human guesswork. Or in other words, that Judaism and Christianity are no different from all the other religions that were made up by people who are just trying to figure out the answers to questions like, why is there a universe at all? Why does life exist? Why do the innocent suffer? How does the creator of the universe want us to live? And what happens after we die? People throughout the world and throughout history have made up stories to answer these kind of questions, and the stories that we find in the Judeo-Christian Bible are no exception. Now, my Christian apologist, of course, does not come to this conclusion because he disagrees with premise two. He does not see the Bible as clueless about the universe or containing irrational prejudices or containing signs of outside religious influences. My Christian apologist defends the Bible against every one of these charges. So for better or worse, my skeptic doesn't really win this debate. The two characters reach stalemates throughout. Now, when I first set out to write the book, I thought I could have the skeptic come up with arguments that the Christian simply could not answer. But as I studied Christian apologetics, I discovered that apologists really do have answers for everything. And I wanted my Christian apologist to defend his faith with the best possible answers, because the debate between the two characters, it would just be pointless if I gave my Christian just straw man answers. What I want my book to explore is how the best possible Christian answers can stand up to scrutiny. Now, as someone who is not Christian, I admit that I'm far from being the most qualified person to write the text of a character who's defending Christianity. But I did take steps to make my Christian's answers as good as I possibly could, which I'll discuss in part 3.